Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and today we are back with another What If video, but this one is going to be a little bit different, as we're going to step out of the realm of comic books and into a cartoon series, specifically into Nickelodeon's Avatar: The Last Airbender, and we'll try to answer the question of what would happen if Azula became the Avatar. Now, here's the thing. My fiance Mariah is a massive Avatar fan, right? It's like, to give you guys perspective of how huge of an Avatar fan she is, she had probably watched through the series in the time that we've been here in Ohio. She probably watched through the Avatar series on Amazon maybe like 6 times, and then it went on Netflix, and then she turned right back around and watched it on Netflix. And I was like, why are you watching it on Netflix? Like, you already know what happens in the show. And she's like, because it's on Netflix now. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. Also, fair warning, I do kind of like to troll you guys a little bit. So I'm probably going to mess with you guys over the course of this video. But just to set the stage here, we know that Aang, the subject of Avatar: The Last Airbender, was frozen in ice at the age of 12 and remained there for 100 years before he was discovered and thawed out. And of course, Aang belonged to the air nomads, and he became the Avatar upon the death of Avatar Roku, who was a member of the Fire Nation, and was so important that he had a streaming device named after him. Now, this is relevant to our story because the Avatar cycles through the 4 nations each time he or she is reincarnated. And so after Roku died, the Avatar passed from the Fire Nation, although I like to mess with Mariah and call it the Fire Kingdom. It gets her all kinds of upset. But it passed from the Fire Nation to the Air Nomads, and upon Aang's death, the Avatar then passed to Korra of the Water Tribe. And the reason I mention all this is that if Azula is to become the Avatar, then we need to establish the succession of Avatars through the Air Nomads, Water Tribe, and Earth Kingdom so that it can finally return to Azula in the Fire Nation. So Avatar Roku died in 12 BG, or 12 years before the Air Nomad genocide. I feel like it makes more sense to just say that, right? 12 years before the genocide. I just feel like it's a good reference point, at which point Aang became the Avatar. Now, Aang is frozen in year 0 and unthawed in 99 years after the genocide. But I think that since we want to have the Avatar cycle through the Air Nomads, the easiest way for that is for Aang to die instead of enter a stasis within the iceberg. That would leave about 85 years until Azula's birth, which would be plenty of time for the Water Tribe and Earth Kingdom to each host the Avatar. This would drastically change the events prior to Azula's birth because the Avatar would no longer be off the table, but a real threat to the Fire Lords. First Sozin, the instigator of the Air Nomad genocide, and later his son Azulon, or Azulon, whatever you want to call it, who would in turn have to deal with it. Now, you would still have the Fire Lords attempting to take over the world during the 100 Years' War, but their strategy would have to change to account for the Avatars. And I think the most likely scenario is that the Fire Lords see the new Avatars as potential weapons, and so upon Aang's death, they would turn their attention to the Water Tribes, hoping to find the new Avatar and eventually end up kidnapping whoever it is. I think it also makes sense that the Fire Lords would try and kidnap a Master Bender from each nation to train the Avatars, so they'd probably have to leave one of the Airbenders alive during the genocide and then abduct a Waterbender and an Earthbender. But what ends up happening is that, try as they might, they don't seem to be able to corrupt the new Avatar into joining their cause. And so they kill the Avatar and repeat the process with the next one born into the Earth Kingdom, but have the same problem this time as well. And so they figure that once one of their own becomes the Avatar, they won't encounter the problem of being unable to influence their loyalty. And so they kill the Avatar from the Earth Kingdom, and the new Avatar, Azula, is born in the Fire Nation to Prince Ozai. Now, one of the things that we're kind of doing here, we're just sort of saying it's Azula, right? I mean, I imagine people might respond and say, well, what makes you think it would be Azula? I don't know, it's a cartoon, who cares about logic? So, at this point, there are basically 2 ways this can go. And the first is that Azula grows up to be evil with all the powers of an Avatar, and therefore becomes a nearly unbeatable entity that propels the Fire Nation to world domination. We're not going to do that. Cue like 90% of people turning off the video. Instead, knowing what we know about the nature of the Avatar, I don't think that's the most likely scenario. In fact, I don't even think it's really possible. And the reason for that is Rava, the spirit of light, which inhabits every Avatar since the spirit converged with Avatar Wan thousands of years ago before the events of Avatar: The Last Airbender. So while one might be inclined to assume that because Azula is crazy and evil, that she would would become the first evil avatar. I just don't think the spirit of Rava's influence would allow that to happen. Now, we're also taking some liberties here, right? Like, there have been avatars who were dicks, right? Like, it's just kind of the way that it was, or they were terrible. But I would like to believe that when Rava takes over a host body, that there's at least some kind of influence, you know, like something that helps them to become a good guy. But regardless, what's going to happen is Azula is going to embrace the role of the avatar as a force for peace, light, and balance. And of course, this will greatly alter the timeline going forward. And so what I see happening here is that Azula would undergo the usual training from the water, air, and earth benders that the Fire Nation has captured, but also communicating with the past avatars who inform her of the Fire Lord's true nature and imploring her to use her powers to stop his quest for world domination. Now, needing to keep her true intentions hidden, however, she behaves as if she's fully on board with her father Ozai's plan to take over the world. And so outwardly, she behaves much like we would see her behave in The Last Airbender. But this is merely a front orchestrated to evade suspicion. But Azula does have one confidant in the Fire Nation, her uncle Iroh, who takes on the mentor role of Azula in much the same way he did to Zuko in the series. Now, this would have a pretty big impact on Zuko's development, as he is still not going to be favored by his father, who sees Azula as the key to winning world domination, and this time he likely won't garner as much attention from Iroh because Iroh will be busy working with the Order of the White Lotus to further the Avatar's mission. So this would most likely result in Zuko becoming jealous and embittered and harboring great feelings of resentment towards his sister, and he would still have the unending desire to win the affection of his father as he did in the series. And so the time would eventually come when Azula would have to fulfill her destiny as the Avatar and rid the world of the threat presented by her father, which threatens to throw off the balance between the four natural elements. And much like we saw during The Last Airbender, the most logical time for this to occur is on the day of the Black Sun, when the firebenders were unable to bend fire due to the solar eclipse. And as it turns out, Iroh has been working with the White Lotus to orchestrate an attack on the Fire Nation along with members of the Water Tribe and Earth Kingdoms. And so predictably, the invasion goes really well because the Fire Nation is extremely vulnerable and unable to mount much of a resistance. Now, Fire Lord Ozai, however, escapes after being tipped off by Zuko, who's eavesdropped on conversations between Azula and Iroh and relayed them to his father to win his favor. Now, while the Fire Nation capital falls, the threat of Ozai and Zuko remains, and the two of them return after their powers have been restored following the Day of the Black Sun to challenge Azula and retake the throne of the Fire Nation. And so Azula's allies from the Earth Kingdom and Water Tribe offer assistance, but being the Avatar has done nothing to diminish her confidence and hubris, and so she declines their help and battles her father and brother 2-on-1. And so Ozai and Zuko are both advanced firebenders, but ultimately end up being overwhelmed by the Avatar after a pretty epic battle. And whereas Aang declined to kill Ozai, instead opting to remove his bending powers through energy bending because he's a hippie, Azula does not show that mercy, as she still retains certain ruthless elements of her personality, and she's actually got some balls. So believing that Ozai is beyond redemption and too large of a threat to leave alive even without his firebending abilities, she strikes him down. Now, she does spare Zuko's life after stripping him of his firebending powers, but expels him from the Fire Nation and makes him live in exile. We chose that ending mostly because it's Zuko and he's awesome. Nobody wants to see Zuko die, right? So things end up pretty much the same place they do at the start of The Last Airbender. But the way that we get to this point is very, very different. The Avatar rises from within the Fire Nation and goes against her own family to bring about peace and balance. And really, it almost had to end this way, as the Avatar has a purpose and destiny to fulfill, and the Fire Lord was a constant threat to fulfilling that purpose. As for the other characters in the animated series, most of them, especially those on Team Avatar like Katara, Sokka, and Toph, would be completely absent to the narrative and would just go on living their lives in their respective hometowns. Sokka would probably have joined his father's fleet at some point, and so he may have seen some action that way. But I think the biggest implications of Azula becoming the Avatar is that she may in fact be the last Avatar, as there are no new airbenders being born, and they are next in line for the Avatar upon Azula's death. And with Aang not growing to adulthood, the line of airbenders doesn't seem likely to continue. And so that would present a new challenge in figuring out a way to rebuild the air nomads so that the Avatar spirit can be reincarnated into one of them when it's time. But I think Azula would probably live long enough to make it past the harmonic convergence that restored the airbenders. So I think maybe that would probably work itself out. I have no real idea. But here's my question. Should we do another one where Azula does what she would most likely do, right? She was always just I want absolute power, kill everybody and conquer the world. Because I feel like that's what most likely would happen, right? Like, I mean, it's cool to see that she would become like a good guy, right? She becomes basically like Anakin Skywalker very early on, where like she redeems herself, you know, and then like, you know, becomes like a good guy. But like, what if she didn't though? Like laid waste to the world. Like, I feel like we should do that, right? I think a really good question here, what if Zuko became the Avatar? I think that's a question to ask, right? Like, what if that happened? What if Zuko ended up becoming the Avatar? That would be pretty amazing. I feel like we should cover that. I feel like that would be an amazing video. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. If you guys are new here to Comments Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like. Now we'll catch you all later. Peace.